Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast. This podcast is for and about first-time pilgrims walking the pilgrimage routes in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. Hola, Peregrinos. We are back. Nancy here after a 3-week break from the podcast publishing schedule while I wrapped up my most recent pilgrimage on the Frances route. I'll tell you more soon, but the short version is that I walked from O Sobrero to Santiago in 10 days, mostly taking my time and enjoying the gorgeous Galician countryside and beautiful early fall weather, with just one rain day. It wasn't an easy walk, though, because I set myself a big intention for the inner journey of pilgrimage. But I loved it, and I'll be going back again next year. Before my personal walk, I had the pleasure and privilege of leading a group of 10 fabulous pilgrims from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Pamplona. Once we reached Pamplona, they continued on without me all the way to Santiago. Some of them are in Santiago right now. 2 have already left, and others are on the final approach. So let me give a shout out to BJ, Marissa, Janet, Angela, Allison, Kelly, Faye, Vicky, Jan, and Laura. You are all Pilgrim rock stars. I'm also super excited to share that my 2026 Camino Experience groups are nearly full. I'm also super excited to share that my 2026 Camino Experience groups are nearly full. If you have been on the fence and want to find out if there is still a spot for you, please drop me an email at nancy@thecaminoexperience.com. Now, let's get to today's guest, author, spiritual director, and pilgrimage guide, Jen Manglos. Jen's first Camino is a beautiful story of moving from fear to freedom. Jen is the author of a newly released book, The Way Back, Reflections, Practices, and Rituals to help you bring home the wisdom of your pilgrimage. This is such an important topic. If you've been listening into the podcast for a while, then you know it's a topic I'm passionate about. So much so that I've invited Jen to lead a workshop for our new online pilgrim community, La Terraza. That's coming up on Tuesday, November 18th, for everyone who is a part of La Terraza. On that topic, I wanted to let you know that we will be opening registration in La Terraza the first week in November. This round will be exclusively for people who have already walked one of the Camino routes and who want to bring the Camino experience home the same way they walked it, in community. More on that in the next episode of the podcast, but for now, let's go ahead and meet Jen and hear her Camino story. Jen, hi. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Hi, Nancy. It's so good to be with you.
Oh, I've been wanting to talk with you for a long time for a number of reasons. Of course, one is the book that you recently published that, of course, we're going to talk about. And then you and I have some things in common about pilgrimage and about the Camino. So I'm eager to dive into all of that.
I'm so glad we get to connect, and you've been such a huge help to me throughout the years. So this just feels like all gift.
I love that. All right. So why don't we start? I always, in all of my conversations, put the pin in the map so my listeners can have a sense of what your Camino background is, because you have already walked the Camino and you've done that beautiful transition of bringing it back home and into your professional life, into your personal life. And I think you and I are both passionate about that idea.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's start by putting the pin in the map. Will you share your first Camino experience?
Yeah, and it's special to talk about it because 7 years ago yesterday was the day I walked into Santiago de Compostela for the first time.
Oh my gosh, I got chills. And that was October 15th, yes?
That was. There's so many words I could say about it, and it still continues to unfold and develop. Every time I think it's done, it's not done.
Isn't that the truth?
It really is. I never expected to walk the Camino. I
Mm.
often will start by saying that because I have a lot of physical issues. I had surgery for scoliosis as a teenager, and there was so much that wasn't available to me. And I wasn't athletic. So the idea of a Camino really surprised me. I watched the film The Way upon the recommendation of a friend back in 2012, and the movie finished, and I sensed this stirring in me that said, "You're going to walk this." And I went, huh, okay. I mean, I
Well,
like to
now that's
travel.
interesting.
Yeah, but you know, this looks like a tough journey and I don't hike. And but I just kind of held it openly and thought, well, it's not the right time now, but God, you'll let me know when it is. And so years later, about 6 years later, I was at an inflection point, asking some questions about what am I doing next. I felt ready for change. And sometimes to kick off a new year, I will sit and reflect on the past year and then kind of dream about what's to come and what it might look like to step into that. And in 2018, I engaged in that practice in January, and the idea of the Camino came up. And I started going, oh, maybe this is the year, maybe this is the year. And it was. And I ended up leaving a job so that I could walk this. I really wanted to walk the entire Frances and knew that I was in my late 30s at the time. I knew that there wouldn't be time and space for that with most jobs in the US. So I
Yeah.
had a sense it would need to be between jobs. And I was ready to leave and asking some big questions about life, about what I'm doing with it. And sat with some friends and said, is this crazy or is this my time? And everyone came back and said, I think it's your time. And it was life changing. I mean, we say this a lot about the Camino, and it feels a little trite, except for the fact that it really was life changing.
Well, we're going to have to dig into that a little bit then. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
we'll get to that. We're going to talk about life changing. So just so we can get the parameters, the facts about your Camino,
Yes.
how much time did you spend out there on the Frances route?
I spent about 38 days in total, including a couple of rest days. So basically from Saint Jean to Santiago, about
Okay.
38 days.
All right. Excellent. And that was in 2018. I think you've been back though. What else have you done on the Camino?
Yes. So in 2023, I went back. I took my first group that summer of August. We walked the last 100 kilometers of the Frances, so Sarria to Santiago. But before they got there, I walked myself from Santiago to Murcia, which was really special. And then I took a group in 2024 on the Portuguese route on the central from Tui onto Santiago. And then I myself walked. I was supposed to walk out of Porto, but had some disruptions happen, but got to do a few days on the central route myself. And then this past summer, took a group again on the Portuguese route, and then have done some other pilgrimages in Europe.
Wonderful. So that's quite a lot and two different routes. So talk to me, if you would, about the Portuguese route. What made you decide to take groups on the Portuguese route?
You know, I felt how crowded the Frances was doing the last 100 kilometers. There were days when, at least coming out of town, we were shoulder to shoulder with people. It did dissipate over time, but I'd been hearing some good things about the Portuguese route, that there was good resources. I knew some people who walked it who really enjoyed it. I kept hearing about this fantastic place called Casa de Fernanda.
Yes, I've heard of that too.
But yeah, it was the combination of just hearing, okay, good resources, it's the Camino, but just a little less crowded.
Hmm.
And so I was curious to see what it would be like. And they are different, but I've really come to value that route, and even just meeting some people who they would say it's the real route, which is interesting. I don't think I knew before that it's kind of a political idea of which is the real route. But because some of the Portuguese route has supposedly the trail that St. James's body took going up the
Yeah.
river.
Right, right. Yeah, because the story goes that the stone barge arrived in Padrón, I think,
Yes.
and then was transported to the area that is now Santiago de Compostela.
Yes. So some people who live on the trail there, they hold dearly to the history of that. And it was lovely to experience that because on the Frances, you just that's not even really a thought. So it
Hmm.
was fun to have this more filled out history.
Very interesting. I had never heard that view of it before. So that's actually makes me think maybe it's time to walk the Portuguese route.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
there's a lot of options. I think it's fun. There's the central coastal, senda littoral, and then the spiritual variant, which I haven't had a chance to do yet. But everyone I've talked to who's done that route just is glowing when they talk about it.
I've heard it's exquisitely beautiful.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, okay. I'm writing that down. Got that on my list. Okay, very good. So let's go back to this idea of the Camino being life-changing or the pilgrimage being life-changing. What was that about in your case?
Within a couple of days of walking, I started to hit into a lot of my own deep fears. Prior to the Camino, I realized how much fear kept me back. And no one who knew me would see that necessarily because I lived a pretty seemingly free life, but I knew that there was so much more. And I couldn't think my way out of it. So I think it's day 3, the descent into Zubiri, which is a rough descent. And I just started saying, I can't do this.
Mm.
And almost immediately I heard, I'll attribute this to God, but I heard God say, why is that always your first response?
Oh,
And it stopped me. And I did a bit of a tour through my life of the times I'd been told no. So I am a pastor, and often as a pastor who's a woman, or at least attempting to be a pastor, there was a lot of no's and a lot of
mm.
times where I had the experience, I had the calling, and yet the door was shut for me. And then other situations in life that similarly felt like it was just no after no after no. And I was on this walk. It's hard, and considering all the ways I'd learned no. And then I heard God say, but with me, you can. And so that's when this phrase, yes, we can, came to me. In Spanish, it's si se puede, which can mean yes, I can, or yes, we can. But I just recently that year watched a fantastic documentary on Dolores Huertas, who co-led the United Farm Workers movement with Cesar Chavez. And she's actually the person who coined that phrase, si se puede.
Oh,
But that became the prayer for me in the moments when I didn't think I could, coming out of Pamplona, that big hill, and I was tired and dehydrated. And I just came back to that prayer and would just breathe it as I walked. And something began to shift. It was like this magic that was working in my body almost. And about 2 weeks in, I noticed myself giving these really different responses. I knew what me before the Camino, like how she would have responded.
mhm.
And then I would do the complete opposite. And it was these responses out of places of deep freedom. The example I sometimes give is I was at an open mic night, my first day on the Meseta, and I'm listening to this group play, and it's some people who worked at the cafe, it's some pilgrims, and they start singing this song by Oasis, Wonderwall, and I felt inside me, I want to go up there and sing with them. And instead of me shutting down that thought and giving all the reasons why I shouldn't, I told my friends I have to sing, and I stood up and I got on stage and sang with them. And that was the moment where I went, oh, I am changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just heard from fear to freedom.
Yeah.
And that happened on day 3 of the Camino.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so interesting to see, as I sat with these questions and, knew what the issue was coming in, but had felt like I had no power to change it. But something of that slowing down, getting curious, walking, it it shifted up the fabric of my life. And yeah, I mean, to this day, I still struggle with fear, but there's something in me now too that remembers what it feels like to live so freely. And I think that's
Mm,
part of why I return to the Camino is it's this call back to my soul of, okay, remember, this is what it feels like to live freely in your body.
mm. We could just stop right there, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Wow. So
Mm.
compelling. I said a moment ago, I actually caught the part where it was on day 3 that this happened. Was there any point where you thought, I got what I came for? I'm done.
Oh, that's a really good question. Probably it was after the fact. I think within a couple of years of my first Camino, I thought, I've gleaned everything from this, from the first one. But it's been recently, just since returning from my last time on the Camino this summer, I've actually started to realize there are things from that first trip that I'm actually really just starting to live into now. I sat with a lot of questions of how do I want to live my life? What kind of work do I want to do? And I've been so scared to actually live into that. And when I came back from the Camino this summer, I started rearranging my life so that I would have more spacious mornings, um, to space to move, to walk, to exercise, to write. And it's the first time I've actually been able to do it. And this is 7 years later. And so I'm actually realizing, oh, this isn't done. And so it actually is kind of re-scrambled how I'm envisioning the Camino even today of, oh, this actually is probably going to keep unfolding, maybe for the rest of my life.
Hmm. Hmm. You've hit on something so important. We walk the Camino, and we have this expectation that it's going to deliver a perfectly wrapped package of some answer or healing or something. And then life is different. We're fixed. It's fixed. Everything's fine. But I found this as well. It does not end. And no, we say the Camino doesn't end in Santiago. I don't know that it ever ends once you
Mm,
get on this path.
yeah. I it's more true than I want it to be sometimes.
Right? Aren't I
Yeah.
done? Aren't I
Mhm.
done yet? Yeah. Yeah. And I understand that. That really resonates with me because I just celebrated my 20-year anniversary of my first Camino. Yes. And to me, that's mind-boggling when I think about that. But I can see that it's this journey that just keeps unfolding and evolving. And I would say 75% of my time on the Camino, when I finish whatever walk I'm doing, I'm done. I'm done. I'm never coming back. And I actually said that out loud in journals, told everybody on my second Camino. I was like, I'm done. I got what I came for. I walked every step. I'm done. I'm never coming back. That was in 2007. So there's something that keeps pulling us back. And there's work to be done after you reach Santiago.
There is, in
Yeah,
some ways, some of the most important work.
I think so. I think so. Now, I will say it depends on what you wanted to get out of the experience, right? One of the things that I've observed over the years, I wonder, I'd like your take on this. I've seen a lot of people who have seen the movie The Way who want to go and have that experience. They want the Camino experience of the community meals and walking in beautiful scenery in perfect weather, no blisters, no rain, just lovely, fantastic experience on the Camino.
Mm,
But that's not always the way it goes.
no.
And then there are people, I think, who go knowing that this is a journey that could rearrange their lives, could truly change the inner landscape. Or they go to heal from some incredible loss, or they go to grieve, or they go to explore that question that you have been asking. What am I doing with my life? What's the next iteration? What's been your experience around that?
It's so interesting because I sit with my own story and I sit with the stories of the people I walk with now.
Yeah.
And yeah, what draws us there is it's such a mixture, and we can bring in these expectations of it has to look a certain way. And one of the questions I'll ask when people sign up to walk with me is, what hopes and expectations are you holding? And then I'll ask it again in the group time. And sometimes we're not aware. A lot of times there are these unconscious or semi-conscious expectations of what it'll look like. And then when it doesn't, there is this sort of grief that can emerge of,
Yeah.
oh, this is different than what I hoped for. This summer I walked with a group of mostly women in their early 40s, which was unique for me. I'm usually kind of more 30s to 70s is the range. And we ended up having two people who injured their ankles,
Mm.
one right before and one during. And it was really hitting a lot of the confronting some of the expectations they were holding, and especially some of the expectations they had of their bodies on this trip. And so well, the gift was we could sit and hold that together as a group and debrief it real time. But it's so real. And even when I came in 7 years ago, I was trying to keep my expectations and hopes as open as I could.
Mhm.
But there were, I did hold this expectation that I was going to have all the answers by the end. And I know we did.
That was me on my first Camino in '05. Just, yeah, I'm here for answers. Give them to me now.
Yeah. And there's a writer I've been following lately who pointed me towards Phil Cousineau's book, The Art of
Mm,
Pilgrimage. And
love that book.
I mean, I,
Seriously.
yeah, yeah, no words. It's just
Hmm.
fantastic.
Hmm.
But he was referencing this idea that we don't always get the answers, or we don't get the treasure necessarily on the Camino, but we have the key that we get to take back home.
Hmm.
And then it's there that we get to unlock it and like let it actually like soak soak into our actual lives. And man, that's really been sitting with me lately, of that image and that reorientation of the expectations of
Mm.
pilgrimage.
So speaking of bringing it home and unlocking those mysteries or those secrets of the Camino, that seems to be something you are also quite passionate about, that
Yes,
you and I share in common.
we do.
Yeah, would you talk about your work with the after the Camino phase of this?
Yeah, I'd love to. So again, I think I could almost say this for every important part of my life. This wasn't the plan. I didn't plan to go back to the Camino. I didn't plan to lead groups. I didn't plan to do this integrative work at the end. But I just, this time around 3 years ago, I was in Santiago. I was in Spain, in Malaga, doing some work, and had a little extra time and thought, let me spend some time in Santiago and just make some connections, learn a little more. And what came out for me in that trip was this need for people on the back end.
Hmm.
I heard a couple of stories of some pilgrims who had um, taken their lives right after finishing, and the community in Santiago was really struck by this, with some of the caretakers and I was connecting with, and it just for me really highlighted this idea that, oh, we need there's more support needed here.
Yeah.
And those are obviously like really extreme versions of people struggling coming out of the Camino, but for me, it really did highlight the gap.
Hmm.
But I was also hearing a lot of people who worked there were seeing that need.
Yeah.
Um, Connecting with some of the folks at Pilgrim House and Camino Companions, and they do such lovely work of doing some of that starting that debrief process. But then people go home and people are scattered around the world.
Yes.
And then it's been fun connecting with you and a couple of people at the American Pilgrims on the Camino Gathering Conference and some folks from the Canadian Company of Pilgrims. Like it's almost like, oh, we're all starting to see this.
Yeah, that's right. The conversation has started in earnest.
Yeah. And I actually, it's become more of a conviction of mine because I think it's lovely to go back to the Camino. And I'm so grateful every time I get to go, but I can't relive the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
Every time's going to be different. And so, how do I actually bring this home? And I had the gift of my first time coming home. I had a good community of friends. I'm a spiritual director as well. And some of my spiritual director friends really helped me through that process. The biggest moment being a friend who sent me to see this fantastic musical called Come From Away. And it tells the story of people on airplanes on 9/11 who were redirected um, following the terror attacks. And there was this question of what do we do with all these planes in the air? Are they still threats? And so a lot of them were diverted to Newfoundland. It used to be the refueling spot mid-Atlantic. And this island, small, pokey island community doubles in population overnight. And they come together to care for these people. But the part that like spoke to me coming back was at the end of the story, they're getting ready to go home. And they're all a little scared and uncomfortable because they're realizing they've changed. But they're going back to places where people don't get this transformation.
Yes.
And I felt so heard and seen as like these people are singing the song of my life right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no one wants to hear this story or they want the 5-minute version and I could talk
Yeah.
for hours.
Yeah. And I will also assert we don't yet know how to tell our stories because we don't know the heart of the story right away. We don't know it until we work through it and get to know it and write it.
Yeah.
Because it's not written on the Camino, I don't think. I think
Mm-hmm.
we start it. Oh, but there's so much more.
So much more. And that's why I was like, I don't want people to miss that part of it. I mean, it's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder in some ways than the Camino itself, but the treasure of it is so spectacular. And the idea that the Camino doesn't just die on the trail, but this idea that you get to bring this Camino back to your community. Like someone around you might need what you bring back.
Yes. And you know, it's so poignant. Phil Cousineau's book, The Art of Pilgrimage, the final chapter, the final phase is bringing back the boon. And he really makes the point that not everybody gets to go on pilgrimage. And in medieval times and in some of this, areas throughout Europe, one person from the village would get to go. And they would go on behalf of the village. And then it fell to them to bring back the blessing and bring back what the, quote, oracle delivered as the message of the pilgrimage. And I think that we have such an opportunity to bring back the gifts of the Camino. I mean, think about what the gifts of the Camino are: kindness, community. What else? What else are the, it's so hard to articulate, but we bring that back to our communities, to our families, our friends, our circles. And that is the boon of the Camino.
And especially like seeing the state of our world now, we need this desperately.
We do.
When I was talking with a couple of women the other day about our experiences, and I was saying, I wish I lived in a world where I could just go up to strangers at a cafe and say, can I join you?
Yeah.
Or be talking to someone as we walk who's, basically a stranger, but get to ask these deep questions about their lives. Why are you walking? It's like this veil of disconnection is ripped apart. And, isolation is such a challenge right now. Dr. Vivek Murthy had just, declared it as like basically this health disaster was isolation. And Camino pushes against that because you cannot walk it on your own. You walk your own Camino, but you will hit a point where you you need the help of someone else. One day I had accidentally thrown away my food for the day, and the cafe I went to had worms on the food, and I ended up,
Ah,
yeah, it was terrifying.
oh, where are we?
This was in where's the halfway point? I always forget the name of
Sagun?
Zagun. Yeah. And I keep walking and then realize there's no more towns until I'm done walking, and I haven't had my coffee or my food. And so I had to just go up to someone and say, "Hey, I have no food. Can you help me?" And the Camino humbled me to where I could make requests like that of other people, and they could ask me. I had people ask for things that I maybe wouldn't get asked in normal life, but because we know we need each other.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I mean, if that's something we get to bring back to our communities right now,
Yeah,
whew, that's powerful stuff.
it is. There's an element of that too that I observed and have observed over the last couple of years around the experience of giving and receiving, where at the beginning of the Camino, somebody says, "Oh, this is happening," and someone says, "Oh, I have Compede. You can have it," or "Here's some first aid tape that'll really help with that." No, 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 I don't need that. No, no, that's yours. I have some. Hold on, I have something. Let me find. That. No, I don't need yours. Then by the end of the Camino, they're like, "Oh yeah, cool, thanks. Here, do you want this? Let me hand this to you. Great. Do you need an apple? I got this. I got some chocolate." Like there's this circulation that by the end of the Camino, it's just the way we operate. But at
Yes.
first, we're like, "No, no, I got this. I don't need you." But then we realize how much we do need each other.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much so. And I mean, some of those moments ended up being the moments that the stories I still tell all these years later are the moments I had to ask for help, or
Yeah.
someone needed my help desperately, and I was able to step in for them.
And it's so satisfying, isn't it?
It is. It's like this
Hmm.
is what we were created for.
Yeah. 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 And I like that about the Camino's effect on me, that I get kinder and more thoughtful each time I go. I see more easily see opportunities to be of service to the person next to me or across the street or wherever.
Yeah. And just to actually see people.
Yeah.
I lead some pilgrimages in my town now in Seattle. And what's fun is we walk these places that most people have passed in their cars for years. And there's something that you see when you walk somewhere.
Mm,
And there's people you see who you wouldn't see if you were in a car rushing off. And yeah, maybe that's one of the more profound gifts of the Camino is because we walk, we have the opportunity to see and hear and smell and taste and touch
yes.
things we wouldn't normally have time or space for.
Yeah. Things change when you slow down to the pace of walking.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's also what helps us bring it home because I know my experience anyway. I could just pause and remember exactly what it was like to be in a particular town, what everything looked like and felt like and smelled like, and who was there because I was going at that pace. And I could probably list half a dozen places where I'd like to just snap my fingers and be back in because that's how deeply they impressed me.
I like this idea, Nancy. I don't know if I thought about that. Of the slowness is part of what allows it to be so ingrained in our memories.
Hmm.
Mm,
The pace of walking.
yeah,
Yeah, there's magic in that. The Latin saying solvitur ambulando or something like that. I might have an extra letter in there. It is solved by walking.
yeah.
And so what is it about walking that solves it? Is it the rhythm? Step, 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 or is it the pace? It's worth asking, right?
Yeah. Well, and researchers are finding with walking that that was the intention of humans, was the idea that we would walk places. And so we're losing, I don't want to say we're losing the ability, but there's something that's being lost the less and less we walk. And, technology, I don't want to say it's all bad because I mean, it's what is allowing us to connect today and allowing
Sure.
those who are listening to listen. But, I think we lose that place of walking and movement in our lives, and our bodies thrive on it. I think it's how we heal. I think it's how we're intended to walk through life, is to move and to be present.
Yeah. Yeah. It's both literal and metaphoric. I think we could paint quite a picture with that one.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I'd like to talk about your book.
Yes, I would love to talk about it.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get the title out there. Would you share the title of your book, please?
Yes, it's called The Way Back. And then the subtitle, and this is the part I always have to look up and remind myself. It's Reflections, Practices, and Rituals to help you bring home the wisdom of your pilgrimage.
It's beautiful. Just
Yeah.
beautiful. Yes. And so I'll have that in the show notes so people can get that book. Is it in libraries? Is it on Amazon? How do people get it?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon and Amazon across different countries. So if you
Okay.
type in The Way Back, and usually the best option is to type in my last name because it's an unusual last name, Manglos.
Yep.
We were glass blowers, so it means man of glass. But it should come up there. And then I do offer, if people reach out on my website, if you prefer not to go through Amazon, I have a workaround.
Okay. Very good. Wink, wink. I love
Yeah.
that. All right. So what led you to write this book?
It was on my mind since really starting to notice the gap that I had mentioned earlier. And I'd started to incorporate some of these exercises in with the groups I was taking because I was finding they were struggling as they came back. And I had a bit of debrief content for them, but not enough. I was realizing, oh, we need a lot more. And honestly, some of them were exercises I've used. So as a spiritual director, I also work with pastors who are going on sabbatical. And so I was actually noticing some similarities of some of the tools that actually are helpful for both of those seasons of like this off ramp into slowing down and this on ramp back in, and kind of that place of how do I process through what this time has been? How do I unpack the experience, and then how do I kind of sense what I'm bringing with me and start to integrate that in? So I was sort of collecting these exercises, and in my mind I went, yeah, this might need to be a book. And the funny thing is, I'd actually wanted to write a book after my first pilgrimage and started working on one that was more of a memoir, and that is still hiding away in my Google Drive. But this is the one that felt necessary. Like, oh, I actually think this is needed.
The right book at the right time.
Yeah. And if nothing else, it was needed for the people I was supporting. So I really wanted something that would be practical. I do love to write, but I do, because this content is so practical, I wanted to just really kind of create a lot of exercises around it. So here's ways to be thinking through it. And some like spiritual practices. And then I've really gotten connected with this idea of ritual making through some of my own healing journey, going through some trauma. And I had a fantastic therapist who really introduced to me this idea of ritual making, which is just ways of letting our bodies know, letting our bodies catch up to ourselves. I think of a funeral where sometimes if you're the one planning the funeral for someone you loved, you're running, and you might feel a little disconnected from the emotion. And then when you finally get to the funeral, something of that structure, that order, that literal ritual cues to your body, it's okay to start crying now, or it's okay to start feeling what you're feeling about this loss.
Yeah. Because we hold it together, hold it together, hold it together. And then there's a moment when release is allowed and there's space for it. And if we can lead people who walk the Camino, lead them to that space, because it's there no matter what. You're going to reach it eventually.
Yeah.
It's just really helpful to have some guidance. Would you walk through what's in the book, just the structure and how you have presented this topic?
Yeah, so I start by actually sharing my own experience of getting into Santiago and the joy of that moment, but also maybe not quite panic, but I will say disorientation.
Mm.
Uh, I in particular remember sitting for breakfast with a group of us who had just arrived. A group of us got in pretty early that morning, and we had this dazed look on our face, like, all right, what are we doing now?
Okay, what just happened and what do we do next?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so I share so throughout the book I share some of my own experiences on that first pilgrimage coming back as little kind of entry points in. But then I start to name some of the realities that are happening. But I break it up into three sections where I kind of name like these are the three movements we go through in coming home. We celebrate. So I'm a big proponent of celebrating and feasting.
Mm.
I come from a Christian tradition, and that's not a practice that's not always engaged in, or if it is, it's in really constrictive ways. And I just think there's something about life that we need to pause and express gratitude and eat good food because we have taste buds for a reason. And
I love that. Let's use them.
yes, and so I love to find ways to celebrate or just mark this moment.
Hmm.
And it looks different from person to person. For some people, it might be a little more internal on their own. Maybe that's continuing on to Finisterre, Musia. I'm watching the sunset by one of the lighthouses. But it might be gathering your friends that you walked with and eating at one of the fantastic restaurants in Santiago at the
Some
Compostela.
good food in Santiago,
Oh, yeah.
right? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. So kind of offer some ways for people to celebrate and also just reminders of, and when you go back, you might need to celebrate with some people there and you might need to keep celebrating. And even this idea that, I celebrate every year I call it my Caminoversary, the day I got into Santiago. I have a bit of a ritual every year now where I watch the film The Way, I get some Spanish food, Spanish wine, and I cry and I read through my journals. And it's beautiful because it keeps that alive for me.
Yes. Yes.
And there's things I forget that I was like, oh, I need to hear this again. So celebration's a big part of it. And then it's release. There are some aspects of our pilgrimage that were just for the pilgrimage that we actually won't get to bring home, that served us well while we walked, but actually might hinder us as we go home. And so some
Mm.
grief practices, even.
Can you give some examples of what we might need to leave behind?
Well, even just the normal rhythms of the Camino, that I'm just going to get up, I'm going to walk till I get my first cafe con leche and tortilla, the conversations I'll have. We might find little ways to bring that into daily life, but that normal pilgrim schedule, probably most people can't do on a daily basis. And a lot of us come to love that. And so
Yeah.
it is a loss I think we have to grieve and let go of and express our gratitude for. I loved living this way.
Mm.
And life will be a little different when I get back. It doesn't mean none of this gets to translate in, but not all of it probably will. And there was a moment a couple days before I finished on my first Camino, and I was crying in the cafe, thinking, "Oh, I don't want to stop any of this. I want to keep walking forever."
Yeah.
But so I include some exercises that actually involve our backpack, where it's okay. What did you bring with you, and what did you pick up along the way, and what that was in your backpack that you now need to let go of. And I'll actually have people take things out of their backpack and so do some things often with their bodies because we have these different entry points into our emotions. And so often it is with our bodies. So I have us do practices like that and to remember and to cry.
Hmm.
But yeah, just to engage in some simple ways of releasing and letting go. When I'm working with groups, I'll do a practice where I have us, do use our hands to kind of represent what we've gained on Camino, what's ours to kind of give away, what's ours to release, and what's ours to draw into ourselves. And I found even sometimes that's just helpful for people just to even visualize what the different aspects of the gifts we have and the different invitations we have for them. And then finally, I have this last movement of integration. And I think that's the key piece for so much of this is integration. How do we actually bring this home? And, once we've celebrated, once we've released what's was only for the Camino, what is it we're bringing home? And then how do we actually start to weave it in? So I use some exercises like a life map or a pilgrim map where we start to tell the story of our pilgrimage, knowing that probably the story we're telling right now might change over time. But what are some of the memories? What were some of the painful moments? What were the realizations along the way? And starting to identify some of the gifts. And then eventually it's creating this new kind of rhythm of life, knowing, okay, this is what life was before. This is some of the gifts I'm coming back with. How might I take some of these gifts and actually start to plug them in? Knowing that the best changes are probably the smaller ones we make, the smaller, more doable ones. I'll work with people who will come up with these grand ideas of how they're going to change their lives, and they're great. But I go,
Yeah.
but what's actually doable right now? What's the small win or what's the baby step into this? And so this is the way just to start kind of baby stepping into this kind of return back.
I'm curious about something.
Yeah.
Did you write the book that you needed?
Oh, I think I probably did. Yeah. And the book that I would say the book that I needed and the book that in some ways my community came together and helped support me through.
Yeah. And I do know that if you needed it as a pilgrim, other pilgrims needed it as well. Yeah. So that is just a beautiful introduction to your book. Really beautiful. And so I'll definitely have the link in the show notes so people can get their copy of that. And what I'm really excited about is that you have agreed to come do a session for my online community, La Terraza, in November.
Yes.
So I'm super excited about that. And I'm going to be opening up registration for La Terraza the first week of November so people can get in and be able to attend that workshop. So I don't know if you know enough about what you'll be doing yet. Is there anything you can talk about what you'll be doing November 18th?
Yes. So the details are still coming together, but I really appreciate, I don't like just scattering information and talking someone's ear off. I like to get our bodies involved. So I will be involving our bodies in this, which, is a little unusual when we're on a screen. So I always name that, like, this might feel a little uncomfortable. And yet we're all people who walked kilometers and kilometers. So
Yeah,
we're people who are connected with our bodies. So I will give us some practices to do together. I often like to do things with shoes because shoes are a sacred object on the Camino.
sure.
And our feet, man, if our feet aren't working well, that can be the quickest stop to a Camino. So ways to just express gratitude to our feet and the hard work they've done. So yeah, I'd like to do just a mixture of yeah, offering some thoughts and then offering us some ways to engage with our bodies. So often we live in these disconnected ways, but one of the gifts we gain on pilgrimage is we get to start listening to our bodies in deeper ways. And so I will bring some of that into our time together.
Well, and I think it's perfect timing because so many people are coming home from the Camino in October, late October, and then we're going to do this on November 18th. So it's perfect. And so those listening to this episode of the podcast, I'm going to have information on the podcast about how you can get into La Terraza and then also to my email list. So people are going to know what this is about. Wonderful. Now, you do some other work too, I do know. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about what other work you do. You are a spiritual director and you are a pastor. And I can really hear how you bring a unique perspective to your work with pilgrims because of that background and because of that vocation. So, do you want to give us a quick rundown on other things that you do?
Yeah, so like you said, Nancy, I'm a pastor and spiritual director. I train spiritual directors through a program with a organization called Nuos Formation. We're mostly online, but initially based out of San Francisco, so not too far from you. But yeah, I love getting to support people as they're starting off as directors and just having a safe place to process through that learning and embodying. And then I help spiritual directors through a practice called supervision. Therapists do something similar where it's a place for you to kind of address some of your sticking points because it's such interpersonal work. It can hit our own stories. We might leak some of our stories onto the people we meet with. So it's a way to kind of keep clear lines and to continue growing and developing in our practice as directors.
It occurs to me that we should probably define what a spiritual director is because not all traditions use that title. Would you maybe define that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. Back in the day, it really kind of birthed out of the Catholic traditions. And often monks and sisters would have this role of like a anamkara or soul friend. Celtic traditions would also hold this similar place of someone who accompanies you in your experience of your faith life. What's beautiful is over time, it's really expanded out to across many different faith traditions. So you'll see people coming from Muslim traditions, Jewish traditions, Protestant traditions who just hold this space for accompaniment for people. And so the term director often triggers this idea of someone who's going to tell you what to do with your faith life. And actually, it's surprisingly non directive. So, really, when I'm sitting with someone, I'm inviting them to listen deeply to their life and deeply to their experience of God or the divine. And so, to help them get clearer on their practice of their faith life. So, it's a lot of reflecting back, it's a lot of asking good, open ended questions and seeing what people discover and helping them land on their own answers.
I love that. I love everything about that.
Me too.
I'm a bit of a junkie, though, for that kind of stuff. Let's have that kind of conversation. Could we just do that? Forget the small talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fun. So I love that's part of my work. And then I pastor within just a small little community up here in Seattle. Yeah, and then the pilgrimage work has been fun because that I take groups usually in summer, and then I've started to do some local experiences. Sitting with this question of honestly accessibility, knowing that I mean, even as you mentioned before, Nancy, not everyone can go internationally, and so how do we engage with this practice of pilgrimage wherever we are? Um, and sometimes, and there are trails developing within the U.S., but can we actually engage in this practice where we live? And can we notice things? And can we take that posture of slowing down, of connecting with others? And it's been really fun. It's been fun getting to walk my city with this lens and introducing people to that. So it's become this fun little community, and that was unexpected. But then I do some support for people as they prepare for pilgrimage and as they come home. And so I also kind of on one-on-one or small group basis will help people out. I had some people who were walking the whole Frances, and so just got to help them get clear on what is it they're feeling called to in pilgrimage. So bringing in some of those spiritual direction skills of knowing that we don't all walk the same Camino. And so what is it the specific Camino that I feel invited into, and how do I live that out?
Beautiful. And actually, the last question I had down to ask you, how do you suggest pilgrims prepare for their pilgrimage and for the return home before they even get started?
Yeah. In preparing, I really will come back to that naming the hopes and desires that you're holding, whether or not that will be what happens or not, but just to even name, this is what I'm coming in with. These are the fears I'm bringing with me, or this is the fantasy I have about it. And really, honestly, really listening to our desires for pilgrimage, listening to the bodies we actually have. I'm always amazed with our bodies. Sometimes we push them beyond what they can do and we navigate that. And maybe that changes things. And sometimes our bodies are capable of more than we can imagine. But all that takes a deep listening to our bodies. And I would say for many of us, we live really disconnected from our bodies. So it's some of the preparation for me is just helping people learn how to listen by doing these walks where it's like, okay, what did you notice as you walked in your body? What pains did you feel? What discomfort? What do you make of that? And
I love that question. What do you make of that? What are you
yeah,
saying about that? What are you making up about that?
yeah,
Yeah, these are great questions. There's that elevated sense of mindfulness is what I'm picking up in the work that you're doing. And I think no matter how you approach the Camino, no matter how much you are aware going in, the nature of walking, that repetitive activity, you become present to the moment, you become more mindful. But I'm just imagining what a gift it is to go in with that intention. And
yeah,
then if you didn't do that, that's okay. Then pick up the book at the end and let's bring it home with intention and mindfulness. I love that. Love the work you're doing, Jen.
yeah. Thanks. It's so fun. I mean, I feel like my work is kind of its own little pilgrimage. And I don't know if you feel the same way about your work.
Totally. Oh my gosh, that is so true. Yeah, that is it. That is it. And to be able to look back over the journey and go, I don't even remember who that person was 20 years ago. Well, I do, but we're not talking anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Boy, the lessons do keep coming. I mean, this last one, I walked 10 days from O Sobrero to Santiago, and I had a significant shift in my inner conversation on day one.
Mm. Whoa.
Yeah, it was just one of those extraordinary moments where I go, okay, I heard that. Thank you. And then it's part of why I asked you when it came on day 3 for you, did you have, I got what I came for, I'm done. But then what is possible when you walk the rest of the pilgrimage with what you already got that you came for? Then it's just exponential from there.
Yeah. And
Mm.
and we just don't know what we're gonna walk
We have
into.
no idea. No
Yeah.
idea. Wow. Jen, I so enjoyed this conversation with you, and I cannot wait to have you visit La Terraza, join us in the community, and share your gifts. Thank you for being willing to do that for us.
Well, thank you for just inviting me to have this conversation here. But I'm so excited for next month with La
Yeah.
Terraza. I got to connect with someone from that community just yesterday, and
Yes.
it even more so stirred my excitement for what's being created there. And thank you
Wonderful.
for holding space like this.
Yeah. I feel like it's the work that I've been preparing to do.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
important work. It's needed work.
Yeah. I think it is, and so much of my work has been getting people started without even realizing that I also could help them come home.
Yeah.
That was that light bulb moment for me. Yeah,
Mm.
very exciting. Well, thank you so much. Any last minute words or any little parting thoughts you'd like to share with my audience?
No, it's funny. I was thinking, should I? But no, this has been so beautiful as it is. So
Yeah,
full stop. This is
excellent.
lovely.
We'll stop right there. All right. Thank you so much. And I will look forward to seeing you in November.
Me too. Thanks, Nancy.
All right. Bye bye.
All right.